The webinar we've got at the moment is the Export-Import Utility webinar, as you can see. In February of this year, the Export-Import Utility was quite comprehensively reworked by our technical team, and they've added additional functionality and made the process and the interface a lot easier for the end user to use. The Export-Import Utility is available on both versions of the ACR program, both SHOPTALK and TRADETALK, and is available in both our Release 1 and Release 2 versions of the software. Now, if you're not sure which release you're on, Release 2 is our newer version. It's the one that we'll be using for this demonstration, and is visible by the difference in the menu is the easiest way to understand the difference in them. So what we can, you'll understand it when you see the menu. Okay, this webinar itself is going to cover a couple of different topics. We're going to export data from the ACR system. We're going to modify that data in Excel, and then we're going to import it back into the ACR system with the the import to update functionality. We'll then also cover some of the additional features that are available in the Export-Import Utility. Okay. Exactly what we're going to cover here is we're going to have a look at updating product descriptions and how you can do that in bulk and easily using this feature. So, in the ACR program itself, what we can do is we can first off have a look at some data and see what we and have a look and see what it actually looks like. So what we'll do, have a look. When we type it in, we'll notice here that the descriptions are all a little bit different all over the place. What we've got here is some people have typed in the whole word, colour wood, some have used an alternative spelling, some have done an abbreviation, and some, yeah. So with this, obviously looking through this, some have even got 3 O's in wood. This makes it very messy and very hard for staff, if they're searching on product descriptions, to be able to find the product they're looking for. So what we're going to do is clean up the descriptions using export-import so that they'll all be consistent. So what we can do here is quit out of this. We can then go to the Export-Import Utility, which is found under the toolbox. Alternatively, you can type it in Run. And in this case, we're going to use the Export from Product. So when we've opened this up, this screen is probably familiar to people who have used Export-Import previously. We've got a file name at the top. Now, an export needs to be given a file name. So we'll give it, and end it in .txt and no spaces in the file name. In the export for product, the product ID is a requirement for this file. It has to be there, so that's automatically been added to it. So what we'll do, we'll add the additional fields that we need in here. We're going to add the product description, and basically what this is saying is that we're going to have a look, it's going to research the list for us. And we can use the find next to jump down for each record that we find with the product, or the word product in it. So what we can do, we'll add that to the export list, and we'll also use the sort key and add that. Now, when you're creating the export list or the qualify list, you can move records up and down by using the move up and down arrow. You can also remove them if you need to by selecting the remove button, and it's easy enough to re-add them back in. So we're actually going to use the sort key as well to sort this. Now, when using the qualifying will determine what records get extracted. So we're going to have the information about product ID, product description, and sort key. But the qualify list will actually go through and narrow down that record. Now, as most of you are probably aware, the sort key itself is used as a short identifier for a product. So we're just going to have it there as part of identifying to make sure we're using the correct products. And we're actually going to qualify by that sort key itself. So what we're also going to do is add the inactive flag. What the inactive flag does is we're going to actually use it to qualify out any product that has been made inactive in your ACR system. That way we're only working with currently active products. So that should just hopefully help us to minimise the amount of work we need to do, that we're not working with products that have been made inactive and no longer useful. So once we're happy that we've got all the records we need to in the export list, we've got the records we need to in the qualify list, we've got our file name here, we can then click on OK. What this will do now, you'll see down the left, it's going through, checking all the records and updating it. And now it's actually come back with updated, and the cursor's no longer on the hourglass, means it's all completed. So what we can do now is we can actually switch over to using Excel and have a look at actually editing this file, ready for it to be imported back in. So what we can do here is open Excel. Once we've opened Excel, we can go through, we can locate the record we need. Sorry. We can locate where we've actually saved the file. One thing we will need to do is change Excel to be looking for all files, because this will actually come through showing as a text file, which we can see here. And that's the one we named it earlier. We can open that. And what this is going to do, this is actually going to open up the text importing wizard. So what the text importing wizard will do will allow us to actually bring this file into Excel to edit it. So we'll leave it as a delimited file to start with. It's a tab delimited file, and we can see down the bottom here that it's demonstrating that the records are sorted the way we would expect them to be. So we can click next. Now the third step is actually an important one that some people miss out on. If you were working with barcodes, or if you're working with a product with a number field that has a leading 0, Excel can tend to cause some problems with that and change the formatting. In those cases, you can actually change it to be text rather than general, and Excel will then leave things like barcodes at the correct formatting, and will also leave the leading 0. Now, can I just check, is everyone familiar with using this text import wizard? Can I get you to use the raise hand function to indicate if you are familiar with it? And if you're not, if you've got any questions on it, please feel free to put them in the question box, and we can have a look at working with it and see if we need to go through anything further. I can see we've got a couple of people who are indicating that they're familiar with it. which is great. Okay. Well, it looks like pretty much everyone's familiar with it, which is excellent. So once we've gone through, once we're happy that we've got the we've got the records sorted correctly, we've got them split up, we've got them in the correct format, we can then click Finish, and Excel will bring it into our Excel will open up. So what we can do is we can just extend it so we can see all of the records, and here we can see that we've got 36 records including our header with the product IDs, the descriptions and the sort keys listed. So we can obviously go through and manually edit the records one at a time. Alternatively, we can use if we press Control and F together on the keyboard, we'll open a find and replace function, and what we can do is we can actually say that we want to look for any word colorwood and replace it with Cwood to go through and fix them all correctly. So what we can do now is we can do replace all, and it'll go through telling us that there were 4 of them done for us. So as we go through and we can review it, we're having a look and it all looks quite good until we come down and we notice that this one's got something different here. So what we can do, we can just go through and edit that. The same as continue looking down, and we notice that there's another one here. So as you can see, in here it's basically editing the same as you would with any other file in Excel and using the standard Excel features. So what we've got now, we can have another review of it. We've got our product IDs, our product descriptions. Now, uppercase and lowercase doesn't matter in this case. The ACR system will bring it in and convert it to uppercase. So I don't need to worry here where we've got the ones that were automatically updated in lowercase. And the sort key we've left the same. Now obviously we could go through and edit more information if we wanted to, but in this case we're fine. So what we can do is save the record. Now you will get a message like this because it is a tab delimited file that we've created. So what you can do is just select yes to saving that. And now what we will need to do before we can bring this file back into the ACR program, we will actually need to close the file down, because if we still have it open, the ACR program has an issue with bringing it back in. So what we'll do, we'll close it down. It will ask you again if you want to save it. You can select yes, and it will go through fine. So what we can do now is we can actually go through and have a look at the ACR system again, and this time we can do an import to update. So what we can do, we can select OK, and this time it's giving us a little white box here. So what we can do is if we press the button with the 3 dots, it'll go through and it will actually open us up to the same location that we were working with before. So what we'll do here, I'm actually going to open up a slightly different file to demonstrate to you. If you had issues with your file, it will bring it up in this product import utility screen, and what it will do, it will show you warnings and errors and allow you to either click on a record that has an error and show you that, okay, that product ID is not found. You can also use the next and previous feature to move between records that have warnings or errors. So you see it's jumped us down. Okay, the product description is greater than 30. We can also go through and use the summary. And what the summary will do is it'll tell us that we've got 3 records with errors and they're that error. Now if there's different types of errors, you'll get 1 line for each error. The same with warnings. If there are different warnings, you'll get 1 line per warning. You can also click on whichever one you want to, whether it's an error or a warning, and select details to be provided with records showing that that's the product ID, that's the description, the sort key, that is having, and this is the error. Now if there's more fields than this, it will show you all the fields and will show you all the records that have those warnings or errors. So it's a way of being able to review your file before you bring it into the system to make sure that you're bringing in a clean file. Now, one thing on the summary screen, it does actually have up here total records to let you know how many records. Now, we had 35 records, it's showing 35, so that means that we're right. So what we can do here, we can actually quit out of this. Let's bring back in and bring back in the file that we had worked on. Select OK. And what we'll see is that we've got 0 warnings and 0 errors on our record. So we can click Summary if we like. It'll show us that there's 35 records, but that there's no warnings or errors. So once we're happy with that, we can select the Update button, and the ACR system will go through and update the records for us. So let's click it. We'll notice down on the bottom left corner that it'll tell us what's happened, and it's showing that there was 35 of 35 records, 35 of them updated, none of them skipped. So that shows us that we've had a successful import. What we can do to verify that is we can actually quit out of this, go back into our product inquiry, and look up the same records we did last time. And this time what we'll notice is that all of the descriptions are updated with the correct details. So now, as you can see, it's a lot neater and easier. The sorting also works better when they're all correct. Also, it helps if people are not as familiar with your product range and the way the descriptions are in. If they're all a standardized format, it makes searching for the products much easier. So what we'll do now, we'll have a quick look at the additional features of the export-import utility. You'll notice that we've got a couple of buttons down the bottom. The File Details button is a recent addition and a very, very useful tool. What it will show is, based off each of the 6 options from the export-import utility screen, the product export, import to update, import to create, the customer, the supplier. Now, all of the features and functionality I've used are available for product, customer and supplier records within the ACR system. Each one of them does have some slight differences in what fields you need to use, but they all work basically the same. So in this field where we've got the product export import, at the top of the screen we have information about that particular function. So what we have is explaining it's a tab delimited file, that the first line must be columns, the first column must be the product ID, which is the mandatory field. So with this, you can actually create a spreadsheet completely outside of the ACR system, use the correct details and import it into the ACR system to update. You don't need to export first. What it goes on further to say is information about that if you have more than one, like product ID for instance, it'll only use the first, product description, it'll only use the first one. It will also detail what a mandatory field. So for a product, the product ID is a mandatory field. For a customer, the account number is a mandatory field. And for supplier, the supplier number is a mandatory field. And then goes on to explain how to blank out records if you need to. What you will notice is that on the left here, the fields that are available to use change depending on which option you're in. This gives a list of all of the available fields for that style of export-import. And the heading as it is here is the heading you need on the top of the column if you're creating your own spreadsheet without using the export-import. So this SA6 last year cost dollar is exactly the heading you would need if you were going to use it. Now what you'll notice on the right here is some information about that style of field. So this one says that it's an export and import field, as opposed to some ones are just export only. So if we were to have a look at the product ID, export only, old product ID. It also says what type of field, whether it's a numeric, which means number only field, or whether it's an alpha, which is a letters and number field. it also gives additional information. So in this case, you've got a maximum of 20 characters. For the bin label, if you were using it to qualify or to set what type of bin label, it will give you the value that corresponds to what you're looking for. So if you wanted to set a product to have an unpriced bin label, you would use the number 5 in this case. If you wanted it to have a priced in bulk, you'd use the number 3. So each record has its own information about that, and each style has all the records available for it. And as you've seen, you can search using the Find Next button to locate the fields that are relevant to what you're after. So now, the Import History button. What this does, this will give you a rundown of the type of imports that have been done, when it was done, including time, how many records were on the field, well, how many records were completed, how many fields were on that record initially, and who did the record, the login name used when the record was created. So what we can do here, we can go through and we can display the information about what was on that export import, so you can actually go back and see what was done on that export import. If there were any errors or records, we can open the summary screen again, and this time we can see how many of the records there were, how many were updated, how many were skipped, and if there were errors here, we could actually go through and detail and show them. And finally, it has a rollback feature. What this will do is, if you've created a new record and no dependencies have been created against that record, so if you've done something with a product and there's no dependencies that have been created with that product, it will attempt to roll that back. If a dependency has been created against it, it may attempt to roll it back but won't be successful. This comes in very handy if for some reason you have done the update, you've then discovered that there has been a slight mistake or there was something wrong with the file you've used to bring it in. It will allow you to attempt to roll back that change. We don't recommend it be left as it'll always be there and I don't need to be careful. You do still need to take your time and make sure that the data is correct before you bring it in, but it's more of a fail-safe to help you that if something does happen, it is there to assist you with it. Okay, so just summing up, some of the helpful tips that we sort of had during the webinar were just a reminder that when you're giving your export a file name, keep it as a single word with no spaces, and the file should end with .txt. You can add the inactive flag to your qualifying and set it so that it is not and is ticked to only include your active products. Close the file in Excel before opening it in export import. It's one of those situations where it catches some people out sometimes if you're working between multiple programs open. And finally, about using setting the text to or the style of column to text when you're using the import wizard, so that way you've got that set in there so that you're ready to work with it without Excel playing with the format too much. So we're at that time now where if there are any questions, we're going to have a review of any of the questions that have been put to us during the presentation. So if you've got any additional questions, please feel free to type them in the question or chat box and we'll be ready to go. So I'll just see if there's any questions that have come through.
Michael, I've got one here. Can I add an additional column to my import file after I've exported the data?
Okay. In that case, yes, you can. If you've exported your field to Excel, you can add an additional field, and the way you would do that in the program is by using the File Details button. You can then use this to find out the column heading you need, add that column heading to the file, and populate the information, and that will allow you to go through and update, add an additional column in. That way you don't need to rebuild your entire export from scratch if you just want to add a single extra column that you may have forgot when you were doing the export. Okay, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it looks as though that's okay. If someone's come back and said that's great, thank you for that. Now, do we have any more questions here? I'm just seeing if we have any more questions here. Do you see another question in that box there, Michael?
Just having a quick review of it. When you have exported, does that then mean these products are unavailable at point of sale? No. The question is, when you've exported the data, does it mean that the products become unavailable at point of sale? No, it doesn't. When we say export, it doesn't actually mean that we're removing the data from the ACR system and putting it out to Excel. We're actually just exporting a copy of that data to Excel. So the products are still available for sale and still available for regular use in the ACR system. So you could export the data today, edit the data tomorrow and re-import it, and over the course of the day it'd be sold, it'd be stock taked, it'd be stock receipted, and it wouldn't be a problem. So yeah, when we're actually exporting the data, we're only exporting a copy of it ready for it to be to be edited and re-brought back in to update the already existing record. So I hope that answers that one.
That's good. Well, I've got another one here. How can I tell if a field is export or import only when creating the export file?
Okay, what you can do with using that, when you're actually in the export itself, you can open that up, and what you'll see is when you click on a field, it actually has whether it's export or import only down on the bottom corner. Now there's three different coloured fields that we will see. One is a red field, which is export only. A red field means it is export only. A blue field means that it's export and import, and a black field means that when you have exported when you've got that column in a field, you must have a record in it. You can't leave the column blank. So I believe sort key is one of those. Okay, sort key isn't. Yeah, if it's black, it means you must have a record in it. If it's blue, it means that you can export it and re-import it. If it's red, it means you can export it only. You can't necessarily re-import it back in.
That's great. Thanks for that, Michael. There's two more questions here that we have. The first one is, here we go. Do I have to export data from the system before importing it to update records in the ACR system?
No, you don't. As I sort of touched on, you can create an Excel spreadsheet from scratch using the headings in the File Detail button. What you need to be mindful of is what columns are mandatory for the style of import you're using, and that you use the field correctly. So if you want to update a record or if you want to use one that you've actually got it in the correct heading as listed down here.
Okay, well that's a good segue into the next question. The final question was, what happens if for some reason the heading is not spelt correctly?
Okay, if for some reason you've got a heading that doesn't exactly match up to one of the headings in the export-import utility, the program has a feature that will allow you to map the record. So it will allow you to, if you've accidentally put A and B, for instance, it will allow you to actually map, say that the column heading you've got matches to the ABN heading in the system. So if you've got incorrect spelling, or if you've got something in there that's not quite a direct match, it will allow you to actually to map those directly across. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Now, I have seen another one where someone's asked about doing retail pricing on a range of products. The export-import utility is not necessarily designed to directly manipulate prices of products. That is more of something to do in the next price manipulator, which will most definitely be a future webinar. But just to make sure that we answer the questions that are provided to us, yeah, I wouldn't be using export-import utility. What you will find is that if we're actually on the products, the next price fields, while available, are all export only. So you can't re-import them back in. Right. Did we have any... I'm just having a quick look. Okay, there's a question about checking how many characters you've got when you're in Excel. To be honest, I don't know an easy way other than counting them. It's just one of those things that I don't have a direct answer for, unfortunately. Excel is sort of, it's not the only program you need to use to edit these files. We chose it because it's a common program that a lot of people have and is relatively easy to use. Please don't feel by any means that we're saying that you have to use this program. If you've got an alternative program that can open a tab delimited file and edit it, that may work better for you. You can definitely use that function. But I just wanted to address that because I know that it's one of those questions. Okay. Alternatively, you could always check with like Microsoft. They tend to have a lot of information readily available on their website and on the internet with tips on how to do features such as that if you did want to go with the Excel product to do this in. Okay, well look, thank you very much for attending the ACR webinar on the export-import utility.